What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 news coming in the form of This Week at Bungie, and we do have some pretty cool stuff to talk about today, so Bungie do give us details about a new Seasonal Engram that we'll be getting at the beginning of next season. This does mix up how some of the seasonal rewards in the game are going to work. They speak about some of the new content and activities that'll be affected by that, but also Bungie talk about changes to power, and specifically Infusion, and essentially a bit of a breakdown of a new max power level system, and that's part of how Bungie plan to kind of sunset some of the gear in the game. We'll talk about that, updates to quests, a hotfix that we'll be getting next week, and a few other things in the video, guys, so if you do enjoy this one, a rating below really helps me out. But now, let's get into it. First up today, yes, we should mention that Bungie made adjustments to the Lie quest yesterday, so in terms of actually progressing with the community step of the quest, they've said, effective immediately, quest progression has been given a 5 times multiplier, which will be increased to 10 times on weekends. And so we are seeing drastically more progress, of course, than what we were going to see. And obviously Bungie agreed that it was going to take way too long to get this done. But also champions now have reduced power level and event progression has been slightly tuned, so they've also made the event ever so slightly easier, which means maybe over the weekend if we are very, very fast, but if not potentially next week sometime. If we do keep up the grind, we should be able to finally unlock Felwinter's Lie. Bungie gives some extra clarifications and details about some of that upcoming content that we'll talk about in a moment. But further into This Week at Bungie, they begin to talk about changes to the Infusion system that we're going to be seeing. And they say these changes will start to be visible during Season 11, but won't truly start impacting the arsenal until Season 12. In the TWAB, they said they want the sandbox to feel interesting, exciting and dynamic, and to evolve in compelling ways over time, and weapons are the primary way that players interact with the world season over season. So they want players to discover new weapons and feel powerful, have interesting new perks to explore, and power the builds that players craft in new and unexpected ways. And to briefly summarize, they say the changes to the Infusion system that they're going to talk about today are designed to promote the following, so they want players to more frequently earn and enjoy more powerful and standout gear. Powerful weapons can be era-defining, but eventually those eras need to end so that new eras can begin. And they also want to foster a gradually evolving meta that regularly promotes experimentation and debate. And so for the actual changes, each legendary weapon and piece of armor will have a max power level it can reach through Infusion. They add that exotics will not have a max power level, but that the max power level for the items will be set at the player's power cap, attainable 3 seasons after its release season, and that's a total of 4 seasons, so it means all legendary gear has a 1-year span of time during which it can be used in activities where being at or near the player power cap is important. They go on to list that the max power level for these items will be visible in-game in Season 11, but no items will be at their maximum power level at the start of Season 11, and this means all of your gear will be relevant in these activities during Season 11, and we're going to be able to see what the max power level is for all of the gear and plan accordingly, because at the start of Season 12, weapons and armor released in Seasons 1 to 8 will have a max power level at the Season 11 player power cap. And so, as we move towards September, or the season that begins in the fall of this year, we're actually going to know about some of our gear that is essentially not going to be able to continue to power up after Year 4 begins as far as we know. And then of course they're talking about endgame redundancy sort of being a thing for certain pieces of gear after a span of around about a year. But they also say gear from Seasons 9, 10, 11 and 12 will be infusible to the new player power caps for Year 1 after their release, and weapons and armor from the Last Wish and Garden of Salvation raids will be granted exceptions and will have a higher max power level. So that's a pretty interesting one. Certain pieces of pinnacle gear actually will remain relevant. Who knows, maybe Bungie are going to have a kind of featured raid system or something moving forward. But in terms of the weapons, they show us right here an example of how max power levels will be displayed in Season 11. So we can see on the Loud Lullaby, the current power is 950, but it has a power limit of 1060, which also is the same thing as the seasonal power cap in that particular instance. And so let us know your thoughts about that down below, guys. But there's a bit of a Q&A right here. They say, yes, we will always be able to equip and use any piece of gear. And so gear isn't actually being removed or locked away or anything like that. It's simply that Bungie are capping the power on that gear. And they confirm, yes, all legendary gear that provides power will have a max power level moving forward, so that's going to include armor, and that when gear drops after its debut season, its max power level will have the same maximum power level as it did in the initial release season, and this is different to gear that is reissued. And they say in terms of gear having its max power level updated, they say this isn't going to happen directly, but gear can be reissued in future seasons. And reissued versions will have a new maximum power level based on the season in which it's reissued. And so that's definitely an interesting one, guys. Give us your thoughts about it down below. Quite a bit of stuff for us to get our heads around. In a way, the process will be kind of simplified once this system is in the game because, of course, every single piece of gear is going to fairly obviously display how long it will stay relevant in terms of pinnacle power, I suppose. There definitely has been a lot of feedback about sunsetting weapons, essentially. But of course, we're learning that even armor pieces, things like that, what were once our pinnacle god roll sets of gear, will essentially have to be replaced purely on the basis that their power level will be too low. So once again, give us your thoughts about that down below. It's definitely something I'm interested to see actually in the game. But next they speak about how in Season 11 they're going to be doing something different with how and where we can earn seasonal rewards. So of course they speak about so far us seeing the seasonal activity like the Vex Offensive Sundial or the Seraph Tower event asking for significant amounts of playtime to earn rewards. But they say it can be frustrating to have so much of your playtime dictated by and focused solely on seasonal activities. So in Season 11, seasonal rewards will drop from completing core activities like Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit, as well as basically all other activities in the game. And they say, in addition to new rewards, Season 11 also features 2 returning weapons from each Season of Undying, Season of Dawn, and Worthy, for a total of 6 weapons that are free for all players. But they say, for the upcoming season, Season of the Redacted, they want to move away from weapon bounties, so instead, they're introducing a new type of Redacted Engram that contains the majority of Season 11's rewards. And by spending seasonal currency, you can influence the contents of the engram. And so, they say imagine if they'd launched that engram this season, it would contain all of the Season of the Worthy weapons and armor, but imagine you could take that engram to the bunker and spend seasonal currency to focus the contents of the engram so that it only contains the 7th Seraph SMG and shotgun. That's essentially going to be a feature, and by focusing Redacted Engrams in Season 11, you can choose your rewards. And that includes the ability, once you've earned it, to focus engrams so that they only contain Season 11 armor with high stat rolls. So that's definitely a really interesting concept, and it'll be good to target specific loot in that way, but they say here is a preview of the engrams focusing categories that all players can access after completing the Season 11 opening quest. So Season 11 armor focusing will reduce the number of rewards in the engram so that it only contains Season 11 armor, and previous season weapon focusing essentially will do the opposite, focusing on those reprise weapons from previous seasons. When Season 11 launches, all players will get 3 focusing categories, but Season Pass owners will have access to an additional 15. So this is a list of activities that reward Redacted Engrams in Season 11. So 2 redacted activities, and obviously those are going to be new DLC activities. Kind of interesting that there are 2 listed there, but we've also got public events, strikes, Gambit, Crucible, dungeons, raids, adventures, nightmare hunts, forges, the Reckoning, Menagerie, Escalation Protocol, and Blind Dwell. Very interesting that so much of that kind of previous year's content is going to have some new relevancy there. I actually think that's a pretty big positive. It's better than playing the same mode over and over, right? And so that is the bulk of the details that give us about those specific changes right there, especially with that change for the new engram and being able to focus on getting specific items. That does sound like a positive move forward and a bit of a step away from how Bungie have done seasons up until now. Of course, we'll have to wait for more details, but on the surface, that part of it sounds pretty good. So once again, let us know what you think in the comment section. A quick shout for next week though, there is going to be a hotfix on May 19th, so this will be 2.8.1.2, rolling out at the weekly reset time, and it does have a few resolved issues, including Season Pass Small Fireteam XP buffs will now work as intended, the Wormgod Caress Gauntlets will no longer grant infinite 5x burning fists when repeatedly taken on and off, and removing the Winter's Guile Gauntlets will now properly remove all Warlock Sigil perks. Now though, something pretty interesting to mention. Many players have been discussing the fact that the exclusive emblem for Titan that appears in Sloane's inventory now appears to permanently say limited time, and considering the discussion about the potential of destroyed locations in the future of Destiny 2, and of course the approach of the pyramid ships, which, yes, are pretty likely to pass nearby Titan in the near future, and so players are speculating, is this being displayed as a limited time because Titan is actually under threat of being destroyed? I guess it is an interesting question. And based on what Luke Smith said last year about removing content in the game, this September probably has the highest possibility of us seeing larger elements or locations and things like that potentially taken away or destroyed as part of the story to make space for newer content. And so I'd be curious to hear what you think about that. And Jinster leaked that we are going to be seeing a pretty crazy cutscene where the pyramid ships pass by a major planet in the system. Probably something we're going to see in the next month as we close out this season. But outside of this, it appears that the city is potentially in some kind of peril as well, given what some players have seen in glitched instances of the tower. But that threat seems most immediately likely to come from the Almighty when Rasputin actually takes the ship out, so of course, if stuff hits the tower, it's possible that falling debris could also land in the last city. And so while we're looking at a few different speculative pieces of content, it certainly appears very likely that fairly disastrous events are coming, be it to particular locations, the entire system, and as always, with a major expansion in the fall, we're going to see that big threat to the last city and human and Guardian civilization in general, so the little teasers are starting to come together, and I'd be curious to hear speculation from you guys about what you think's going to happen, both next season and in the fall as we see those major events come together. To round up a few bits right here though, DMG clarified once again that quest progress for the Lie is currently community-based, and percentages will update every 15 minutes or so. And Cosmo confirmed that they had switches essentially to nerf the champions inside of the Seraph Tower event, or to adjust the difficulty of certain parts of it. And essentially it appears that they took kind of the safe route, nerfing both the event, but also granting considerably more points when we actually get clears. And again, they reiterate that it's counting Guardian completions, not event completions specifically, so a fire team of 3 who successfully clear the event will count as 3 completions. DMG responded to the concept that Bungie would give us the weapon whether we actually finish the quest authentically or not, and so he said something I want to touch on here. Success isn't whether or not you complete the quest, it's how quickly you complete it. The point of this step wasn't to challenge the community to complete something, and if they didn't, they wouldn't get something. It was to rally everyone to a single event to kick off the Lie. The feedback I'm seeing is as follows, so community events are cool, but they feel a bit too frequent at this point in time, but also that current community event splits the population between 3 destinations, and it would be nice for players to focus in a single area or activity, and that players would like to see more exclusive rewards tied to the event that would actually help to drive participation, right? And I agree on that one, definitely Seraph Towers could be made to feel more relevant and rewarding in itself as an activity without running other quests and objectives. But of course he points out that the current goals were far too high, and that the objective focuses on a public event that's been available since the launch of the season, and without new rewards or reasons to visit the event, there is a bit of burnout. As well, he says that he's not going to touch on feedback that actually deals with spoilers just yet, so they are talking about other feedback potentially about the reward for the quest, upcoming missions and things like that. And he also added that if the timing was a bit different, maybe if this quest dropped further away from Guardian Games, which was a pretty big event in itself, maybe there would be a little bit less frustration about having such a grindy process. And I think definitely to an extent that could influence things, but I'd be inclined to say primarily it was specifically the activity that was required, but also just the sheer number of completions required before we would really see any tangible progress on the card. So let us know if you guys agree with that. DMG did clarify though that the team developed pipelines for community-wide data to be automatically represented in game, and that's why we've seen very regular updates on things like Guardian Games and the scoring for that, but also for this new objective as well, so that will be useful for future similar events where there is a community scoring element. And so once again, give us your thoughts down in the comments section, guys, but for today that is everything we have to talk about in the video, so if you've enjoyed this one, a rating below really helps me out. But also feel free to hit subscribe and turn on notifications, and that way I will keep you up to date with the world of Destiny 2. But otherwise for now, whatever you guys get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.